Welcome to the S2 Cognition podcast. S2 is the official cognitive evaluation in sports, from youth to pro, where athletes and coaches build to win.
On today's episode of the S2 Cognition podcast, we talk to Joe Dillon, Washington Nationals hitting coordinator. He's a world-renowned hitting coach and widely recognized as one of the top hitting coordinators in all of Major League Baseball. He won a World Series with the Nationals in 2019 and also helped coach Bryce Harper back to MVP status by winning in 2021 with the Philadelphia Phillies. We talk World Series experience, using and helping develop cognitive drill packages to challenge professional hitters, and the importance of understanding your own hitter's cognition. All that and more is coming up next here on the S2 Cognition podcast, and you're going to love it. Joe, I introduced you, but I want you briefly to describe your journey in baseball, right? Obviously, you're a professional player. Now you're into coaching, long-term career in coaching. Can you describe kind of briefly your journey?
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been obviously interesting journey, and everybody's dream as a kid is to play in the major leagues, and I was fortunate to get to achieve that goal. My path was a real bumpy one, but I think that's boded well to the coaching part of my career as well. A lot of the experiences I got to go through as a player, playing overseas, playing winter ball in Latin America, playing in Japan. I had a brief stint where I had a back injury and didn't think I was ever going to play again. I went back to Tech and ended up getting surgery and was able to come back. And so just even that situation where I got to step back and get on the other side of the fence and coach for a year and then go back and play was really, really, impactful for me and my perspective of how I went about things when I came back and played. And then obviously all those experiences and translating the coaching side. And I've been real fortunate to be around some really smart people and really good players and MVPs and all-stars to learn from, and, smart people like Scott. That's the one thing I'm not real smart, but the one smart thing about me is I know who the smart people are and who do things really well. And I get a chance to get around them and pick their brains and learn from them and, try to figure out every way possible to learn things to help my players get better. And, that's kind of been the journey, and, still learning every day and trying to help the players get as good as they can and different ways to train and do everything else. It's fun. I'm passionate about it. I love it. And that's where we're at today.
You weren't really talking about yourself in the light that I was hoping you would talk yourself in. You are a very professional. Having you on is a tremendous gift for us. We're so thankful and that you've been generous with your time. I mean, you've coached an MVP. You've won a World Series, right? A lot of guys that are still playing, you've coached. I would love for you to describe how training the cognitive aspect and the decision-making aspect has had an impact on coaching these top elite players in their field.
Absolutely. Kind of the genesis of S2 and my relationship is through Paul Phillips. I remember talking to Paul. Paul and I came up through the Royal system together, known each other a long time. I remember when Paul first connected with Scott and Brandon and like, Joe, I just met these guys. They're really smart, and I think this could be some groundbreaking stuff. You need to look into it, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah. And so when we actually hired Paul with the Marlins to be the AAA hitting coach his first year, and then became the catching coordinator the next year. But that's when we were introduced to Scott and Brandon with S2 and kind of started that relationship, and obviously very intrigued by the information and, connecting the dots, not only from the assessment perspective of the individual cognitive skills, which makes perfect sense when you step back and think about it. It's kind of a missing bucket in development and even evaluation to that point. And then having that piece of information and getting to dive in and learn and ask questions and connect the dots of why hitters in my field, why hitters make the decisions they make. And when things go wrong, how to try to protect them from some of their weaknesses and try to enhance some of their strengths. And go driving through that. And I remember the first time I flew out to Nashville, and we all sat around and had a whiteboard session for all day long. And I think we could have went for weeks. But just having Scott able to connect the dots, like, Scott, here's drill concepts and packages and progressions that we've done that work. Why? And he goes, well, that's great. And here's why it works. And you're hitting these processes and these different things, and they have to do X, Y, Z to execute that, blah, 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 blah. And it was just groundbreaking for me to really start connecting the dots of the why. And then when we know the why, we're able to, actually, prescribe certain things for the guys even better. So you're attacking it, basically doing surgery with a scalpel instead of a sledgehammer.
I love that.
Let me comment on that, because I don't want to be accused of calling our podcast guest, full of crap in front of everyone. But when he says he's not very smart, he's full of crap. Forgive me, Joe. No, this relationship really, we've got scientific principles, and there are certain decision systems that these athletes are using in the game. And we know about those systems and how to train them and but what we're missing is that baseball expertise. And it really is this synergy. And we just struck an incredible accord with Joe and with Paul. I mean, you got two leading baseball minds with the geeky scientists that we are in S2, sitting down in a room and just talking through, hey, how does impulse control system work, and how do we train it, and timing? Help us understand timing, and so this really was a sharing of the minds, and Joe's expertise and his passion for understanding, all facets of what makes a great hitter. And when he got excited and Paul got excited about the decision-making piece and how there was an opportunity here that hadn't really been exploited, that was untapped in developing hitters. It very much was this synergistic exchange between his incredible and vast knowledge of baseball and hitting with trying to marry that with our scientific principles. So don't let him fool you. I still remember those exchanges, and they're some of the most rewarding and enjoyable I've had in my entire career, just sitting and talking baseball and science. And we've got Joe and Paul to thank for that.
Just to follow up on that. So it was 2016 was when we brought Paul on board. He's AAA hitting coach. That's kind of that year that we kind of dove into information, and, I really try to learn as much as possible and having conversations with Scott. And then, that off season, we created drill progressions and, try to connect the dots on, what systems we're working, why we're working them, how to work them, how to get guys better, how to train better, how to prepare them better to perform better in the game, blah, 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 all those different conversations we had. And I remember our guinea pigs, which, lucky or whatever you may call it, coincidence, luck or whatever, but Austin Nola and Isaac Galloway were the two players. We're like, all right, these are guys that have been minor league guys their whole career. And, one of them, if you look at, the buckets that I look at, the physical bucket, the cognitive bucket, and the kind of the human element bucket of being a human and all those different implications that comes into play as equations, as well as just the physical and the cognitive. But, those two players are like the exact opposite, right? So you have one, and again, it's all relative to the population. So, they're still good athletes, but relative to the population, we had one elite athlete and the cognitive skills weren't as elite as the others, who had elite cognitive skills with not as elite physical skills, right? And so kind of the training concepts that we came up with and put into action, where, again, talking about decision making and how to prime your system to execute different things and maximize your strengths, minimize your weaknesses. So we put them through the same progressions, but we told one guy to try to pull the baseball because we knew he had the cognitive skills to shut down on the backside and make early decisions and adapt and adjust on the fly, where the other guy needed to create as much time as possible, and he had some physical skills to help him get there on the backside, but we needed to create as much time as possible to help him with his decision-making process and the way he's going to process the information. And so we told him, like, all right, you're giving up the inside corner. Everything's got to be opposite field. Doesn't mean you're not going to pull anything anymore, but that's how you're going to prime your system. We got to try to fight and create as much time as possible for you. And it worked on both facets, right? And so I tell the story to a lot of guys when I started introducing them to some of the progressions. And, Isaac Galloway, the first time he did it, it was in season. And we're like, all right, Gally, it's not going to be a whole lot, be like 40 swings, and it's going to be really tough. But just bear with it, compete. This is what you're trying to do, trying to back everything up, see as long as you can, try to make good decisions, swing at strikes, take the balls. And that's all we want. That's all we want to accomplish right now. And he broke 5 bats in the session. and he was sweating. He was in New Orleans. He's sweating. He's dripping through his BP top. He's like, man, he's ready to quit. He's broke 5 bats. His confidence is shot. But like, hey, just trust the process. When you go up in the game, it's going to slow the game down for you. So he goes out in the game. He's like 3 for 4, 2 doubles and a homer. He comes out. He's like, I've never seen the ball like that before. It just it was an aha moment for him, right? And then he began to do those drills every day, and then it became in the organization kind of like hey, can I do the Galloway drills? And so that was kind of the genesis of all the our drill concepts put into action that year. And obviously we've grown and come up with different variations and all the kind of stuff from there. But that's a good story I like to tell, and not something I always remember because I was kind of the first ones. And you never know as a coach if it's going to work or not. In theory, everything's great, but until you get a chance to go out and execute it and see how it works and see how the guys navigate through it, you really don't know. But we're able to hit a couple home runs with the first time, which always helps in the confidence of executing that.
Well, Joe, I love that I'm glad you interrupted and went there, because I was going to ask you how understanding, right? You've gotten individual profiles on your players, as you just alluded to. How has understanding, you just gave us an example of this, how has understanding those profiles changed your approach when trying to develop them?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a huge piece of information for a coach. Just understanding, how your player processes information. I remember when Scott was, educating me on everything, and he's like, Joe, just like physical skills, every athlete has cognitive skills, right? So just on the physical side, you don't want to ask a player to do something he's not capable of doing. Same thing on the decision-making cognitive side. And so understanding that, like for Galloway in his situation, telling him if we want him to pull the ball, if he's priming himself to pull the ball, which in turn, on the execution side, you got to make your decision a little bit earlier to get the bat head out, right? So he's taking away time, which he can't afford that. He needed all that time, right, to process information a little bit longer, to make better decisions consistently, because that's what his Achilles heel, so to speak, in his career to that point had been, is like, high strikeout, low walk, didn't impact the ball. And this he's a 5-tool player physically, but he couldn't get to some of his tools, on the hitting side, because he just wasn't buying himself enough time. So when he figured that out, right? And so Nola was opposite. So having their profiles and understanding what they did well, what they didn't, and putting that piece in the puzzle with the physical skills and all those different things. Now we can, even though the drill concepts are pretty similar, what they're going through, it's how they're executing it, the decision they're making, how to prime themselves with their approach to execute those things, to maximize their strengths and weaknesses. Those are the things you can do when you have their profile. We had the profiles of the Marlins. When I was at the Phillies, we're a S2 organization as well last year. And then, we're not this year, but it's definitely what place I've been where I've had the assessments to look at and really see how they process information. It's much easier, to be sure about what you're doing, what you're coming up with, and again, all the drills are going to work, right? I mean, it's just the fundamentals of training, the different processes are going to help everybody. But when you know their strengths and weaknesses, you can, hey, these are some areas you struggle in. We need to hit this more. this is your approach you need to take to protect yourself from those situations and enhance your strengths and minimize your weaknesses. So it's definitely, very important information to have, in my opinion.
It's funny, Joe, you talk about Galloway and you talk about a 5-tool player, professional baseball player, and he broke 5 bats going through these drills. These are not drills that are for the weak-minded or the weak of faint of heart, right? We design these to really push and challenge. I mean, when you think about arguably one of the most challenging feats in sports is in less than 400 milliseconds, making all those decisions and organizing your motor system to deliver a bat to hit a ball traveling at you at ridiculous velocities that are unpredictably changing on a pitch by pitch basis and moving in linear and curvilinear ways. I mean, it's superhuman. And so these drills are designed to prepare for that incredible feat. You've used these drills at all levels. I mean, talk to us a little bit about the reaction of the players. You gave us one example of Joey, but in general, the reaction of the players, especially players that haven't been exposed to decision-making drills, and just are they more engaged? Do they like them? Is it frustration first, followed by, hey, total buy-in? And I mean, you can always push the needle. Tell us about kind of the players' experience with these drills.
Yeah, I think, as time went on, it's becoming easier and easier to get guys buy-in. And I think everybody's getting up to speed in the industry, understanding training environments and, as skill acquisition and creating different environments, constraint-led approaches and different things to maximize player performance. And everybody's different. I think everybody's understanding that now. So I think players are more familiar now. Machines are commonplace pretty much throughout the industry, and using them on a daily basis for different things. Where when we first started, it wasn't as much. They're getting in there, and the traditional training is, we're the one sport in the world that didn't train at game speed. Now we're doing that, but back then it was just like, I don't want to get in there and get my butt kicked every day, and get my confidence shot and then go out and perform. But I think it's just a mindset change. And once the players understand that mindset change of like, look, this drill isn't about me mastering it and dominating it from a results perspective. It's about training my brain and getting my brain to understand, with time pressure in these different drills and changing the environment trajectory and speed and, all these different things of understanding, like, these are the systems I need to prime and train. So when I do step in the box, the game slows down for me and I'm able to make these split-second decisions more consistently, be able to react to different pitches, pitch types, and how the ball, the pitchers are getting better and better with, creating efficient spin and tunnels. And, as hitters, we got to train it and be better at it to be able to combat those things. But I think, nowadays it's a lot easier sell than it used to be, say 3, 4, or 5 years ago. It's being more commonplace, and we've, different machines, gotten some better machines. You can control spin and spin rates to mirror pitch types in the game, as well as we've gotten some balls that are softer. So obviously, there's some benefits obviously of hitting the hard balls as well, but in certain situations to have the softer balls that aren't going to blow your bat up, blow your hands up. So some of the hurdles we used to have in the past, we have some ways to get around that now. So it's evolving, always evolving and getting better. And I think it's accepted a lot more and a lot easier to sell nowadays than it used to be, for sure.
And I think, one of the things I remember from our conversations and our ongoing discussions has been just the appreciation that you really have to marry the science with the baseball expertise, because people come up with drills all the time, right? Coaches come up with drills all the time, and you can create ridiculously hard drills, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's working what you intend it to work. And so there is some method, there is some some guidance we can get from how brains work to build smarter progressions and structure the drills in ways that are going to maximize your efficiency. And so that's been really important for us at S2 Cognition and coming into the baseball world. We're very mindful, and this, we're respectful. We don't want to tell coaches how to coach. Coaches are the baseball experts, but there are ways to structure drills and create drills and design progressions that are going to be more efficient than just coming up with a really tough, challenging drill or two and hope that translates. And so it's about transferring to the field and building these transfer paths of drills and progressions that capitalize on what we know from the science of the brain. So I think that's important. And, you and Paul always said something that you would tell your athletes, hey, I'd rather you fail in here than out there against the likes of Verlander and Kershaw. So fail in here so you don't, so you're more successful out there.
For sure. No, I think you hit the head perfectly, Scott, with understanding everything's got to make it to the field, right? So whether it's information or the way we train, whatever, if it doesn't lead to success on the field, it's basically a waste of time and worthless, right, for the player. So that's been key in, over the years of talking with you guys about of how it impacts different systems and even just bouncing ideas on how to make things better. I mean, that's kind of the approach I've always had anyway with the players of, okay, here's your routine. Here's what you do. How do we make it better? Right. It's the same thing when we're training on the decision making side on the cognition. Like, all right, here's some drill concepts. Right. How do we make it better? And just bouncing ideas off you over the years. With coming up with different ways. Hey, that's great if you tried this, or I'll call Scott. Scott, we've been doing this drill. I've tried this a couple of times. It seems like it's working better. What do you think? Yeah, that's great because of X, Y, Z or whatever. So I think you hit the nail on the head right there with, we got to have things that can make it to the field and improve performance on the field. Everything's good in theory, in the lab or wherever, but if we don't see the application and players take it to the field and have more success, it's pointless really.
And that's a great observation. Plus everything we design is designed for the field. Keep the bat in the hand. It's not putting the bat down and picking up an iPad or turning on a television touchscreen. It's bat in hand, in the cage, on the field, incorporating the visuals and the motor demands of the swing into the actual decision-making part of the drill. Linking what you see to what you rapidly decide to what you do. And I mean, that's how brains work in athletic performance. You can't, if you set down the physical and go do the cognitive outside of the game, it's not going to transfer. It's not going to link up to the action control systems and what the eyes are having to process. So you've got to keep the brain links the eyes to the motor system, to the body, and you've got to work them in tandem and work them in parallel in order to really build those impactful, transferable skills.
Yeah, we've done a lot of talking about the professional side, but Joe, we've S2 has really been committed to helping younger athletes. So can you speak to the importance of training, cognition at the younger athletic levels for youth baseball, youth softball? Why would it be important for them to be a part of this part of S2?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, just talking with Scott and understanding, this is out of my realm, but how the brain is continuing to develop until 25. Is that right, Scott?
Yeah, right in that early mid-20s, yeah.
Yeah, and so I think the findings of S2 and working in the youth market and even in the pro market as the time's gone by and the more information's been gathered of understanding where certain areas you can move the needle and enhance their skills and get them to do things. And I think the sooner you can try it, right, that's more experience. You're building that Rolodex of pitches seen and understanding pitch movement and all those things. The sooner you can train that, theoretically, the more you practice it and the more you do it, you should create those skills and be able to execute more consistently. And that's that's the biggest thing, right? Is there's even at the big league level, there's failure all over the place. It's just the best ones don't fail as much as the other ones, right? And that's pretty much it's all about consistency. And so if you can start doing those things at younger ages and get accustomed to it, so like the first time you ever see 90 miles an hour, it's a big deal because you haven't seen it before, right? The first time you see 100 miles an hour, I mean, you watch TV now, these guys, it's elite velocity everywhere. It's 95 to 100 every night, almost every guy. But they see it all the time now, and it's not that big of a deal. Where before 100, I think I played 13 years, and the first 12 years of my career, I saw 100 3 times in person. My last year, I was in AAA, and I saw like 12 guys hit 100 my last year playing, right? And so now we're seeing it all the time, but it's just like once you get used to it, it's not that big of a deal. So again, at the younger ages, you start introducing these drills and concepts and getting them to see certain things and build that Rolodex. So it's not new. They've seen it before. They get in there. They know what to do. They know how to prime themselves to attack different pitches and pitch types. They see certain things and understand. Right, you're creating basically, like I say, create swing solutions for different pitches. So you can't have a swing solution for a pitch you haven't seen before, right? And so that's the idea is, introducing them, building that Rolodex, like Scott always talks about, building that Rolodex of pitches and pitch types and putting them in different environments and changing timing and time and space and trajectory and all those different things that we know go into making good decisions in the game, and training it. And I think the biggest thing, one of the aha moments I had with Scott early on was, we've always trained to swing. And then we expect him to go in the game and make good decisions and swing at strikes, take the balls. Well, traditionally you never work on taking, right? You never work on the no, just like the yes of getting your swing off. We never work on the no and shutting that motor program down. And so that's something that, I've taken a run with and, I think is very impactful on our hitters, training the no, just like the yes. And, at the young level, at the young ages, again, introducing that to them, because it's all swing, 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 swing. They get hitting lessons. What they swing the whole time, right? And then you go in the game. What are you swinging at, Johnny? Come on, that ball's over your head. It bounced in the dirt. What are you swinging at? Right. So
that's right.
Again, all those things. The sooner we can introduce it to them, building up their experience and putting them in different situations. When they do get in those situations in the game, it's going to be more familiar to them and have a higher chance for success.
Yeah, Joe. I mean that's so right. I mean, you're almost preparing them for the next level, because when do we need these cognitive skills? When the demands are the greatest, and they're the greatest in the big leagues, right? I mean, the decision making. I mean, you've been a part of World Series champs. You've coached MVP. You've coached a lot of the guys that are in the World Series this year. I mean, you've coached at a high level, and where they're facing the greatest demands on their decision making because they have less time and more unpredictability and more things the ball can do that's crazy. And that's when chaos is when you need every advantage in these split second decision making skills. Now, 14, 15-year-old probably doesn't need them as much as, a pro ball player. But you're starting to build those skills and train those skills and challenge those skills. It will help them a little bit at their current age, the youngest kids, but it's absolutely going to prepare them and build their skill for the next level when things get harder and more challenging and more demanding. I love that observation that, hey, you're preparing them for the next level. I'm curious, you have worked with some of the best hitters on the planet. I mean, what was their response? You think, sometimes you can think, hey, they've got great swings, and they do, and they're great athletes, and they are. But I mean, this decision making, how critical was that in your development of world champion hitters?
I think one of the main areas that it helped us was our bench players. Like Howie Kendrick, for example. He was a big proponent of it. I mean, in all guys, at that level, you'd be amazed of guys that have been in the big leagues for a long time, very successful. They still want to get better. everybody wants to get better, and they're still looking for new things and new ways to help them get better and perform in the game. And, Howie, is a great hitter. I mean, he's known, he's been a great hitter his whole life, and everybody knew that. And, future batting title winner when he's coming up and all these different things. And, he had a wonderful career, and some injuries later in his career prevented him from playing every day, just some old injuries that prevent him from playing every day, but introducing him to the different drill progressions in the cages in spring training. And he took it and ran with it. He's unbelievable. But one of the things he mentioned to me was, Joe, he's like, those drills were able to keep my game timing precise. So when I did pinch hit, it's like I still have my timing, and it feels like I'm still playing every day, even though I'm not. And creating that environment. So when he steps out there, even though he's seen 95, he's pinch hitting up the closer, and he's seen 95 for the first time that night with the game on the line. He had a great routine that he did every day, and that would prepare him. So when he did step in the box, the 95 would appear 85. And it's like he's already had 4 at bats, and he's up there like he's been playing every day from a cognition, brain perspective of the feel that he had. He really felt like it helped him slow the game down consistently and keep that his timing fine tuned, which we know is a really hard thing to do off the bench. And he was able to dominate off the bench and as a part-time role. But I think those are the ways it was really able to impact us. Our bench players were able to stay sharp and like they're playing every day because of the reps they're getting in the cages, in that perspective and performance. And then, I think on the other side, just from the everyday players, it helps them as well. Again, putting them in these different environments in chaos, so to speak, and they figure out, when I'm late, this is what I feel like. Because some of the situations we put them into the cage, they're going to be late. They have no choice. But when they're going through that every day and they feel it in the game, they're able to feel what that feels like because they experience it on a daily basis, and they're able to step out and make that adjustment the next pitch. And that's what the great ones do. They're able to make adjustments from pitch to pitch and at bat to at bat, right? And fight for that little bit more of consistency and on the decision-making side, and which you make good decisions. You're only as good as the balls you swing at. You make good decisions. You swing at the right pitches over the course of the season, you're going to impact the ball more, and obviously your numbers are going to be better at the end of the year. So just that cascade of positive events, and it all starts in how you prepare, and that's how it's been able to impact our performance on the field.
What a great message to the young ball players out there that, look, you've got athletes at the pinnacle of the game who are still putting themselves in situations to fail, to challenge, to push their systems. And it's not all about getting in and mashing balls that are, fastballs, 75 miles an hour, 80 miles an hour, right down the gut. And it's got to be dynamic. You got to challenge these decision-making. You don't build that flexible ability to make those adjustments you were just talking about unless you actually train your brain how to make those adjustments and sharpen them and refine them and challenge those skills. That's great, Joe.
Yeah, Joe, thanks for sharing that story. That was phenomenal. When we saw that Joe was coming on, immediately something I was super excited to talk to both of you guys is this, how the difference in the way we measure rhythm versus timing. And so, we got a world-renowned cognitive neuroscientist on. We've got a professional hitting coach on. You guys are going to know, our listeners are going to eat this up, man. Scott, can you talk to us about the differences? Because a lot of times rhythm and timing are thrown around interchangeably. Can you talk about A, how we measure it, and B, how it's different? And then we'll throw it over to Joe.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Because timing, you hear that timing is everything. Was it Warren Spahn, Hall of Fame pitcher, said hitting is timing and pitching is disrupting timing. And I may be paraphrasing a little bit there, but I think every coach appreciates that. It's all about timing. And, when we started talking about timing and the variations of timing and certainly our thinking about what the brain is doing with respect to timing came out of discussions with, coaches like Joe and Paul Phillips. And, there's two different phases that we think about. There's kind of this rhythmic dance between the hitter and the pitcher, right? So the hitter is moving and getting to that good hitting position, in concert, in sync with the pitcher's windup and cadence and the pitcher's tempo. And that, as Joe will educate us here, I'm sure in a second here, that how critical that is, that you get that foot down, you get to that good hitting position so that you're prepared to then make the ultimate timing decision, which is what we'd call an interceptive timing decision or a coincident timing, where that's the decision the brain sends down that says start the swing, and it's intended to optimize bat to ball contact. When do I start the swing and deliver the swing so that it's on time and makes contact with the ball at the optimal point in space? That timing decision is a little bit different. And so we talk about rhythm being the kind of the setup, the table setter, that a hitter's ability to synchronize their load movements, their getting to that good hitting position, the movements that are made during that time in sync with the pitcher is kind of that rhythmic timing. And that's a little bit different system in the brain that governs rhythm-based, getting in sync. I most hitters probably would say, man, there's hitters that are a little easier to get in sync with, kind of because of the rhythmicity and the consistency of their windup. Then you've got the Cuetos and some of the pitchers now that are doing all kind. I just saw one in one of the championship series, stopping and waiting and delaying and doing different movements. Sometimes their arms go above the head in the windup. Sometimes they keep it close to the chest. Starting, hesitating, stopping, those kinds of things to disrupt that rhythmic timing. And if you can disrupt that, I'm sure Joe will have some thoughts about, man, if you're late there or, out of whack in terms of that rhythmic getting to that good hitting position, it kind of rushes and puts pressure on all the other systems and the more interceptive timing system. And so I think it's important. We measure both rhythmic and interceptive timing because they're different aspects of what a hitter's doing with respect to timing. And they impact different phases of the whole swing related timing system.
Yeah, getting started, right? Getting started. When do I get started? And then when do I swing the bat? I guess would be a quick recap of that. So, Joe, why is this distinction important?
This is something I think we could talk about for days. I think the longer I do this, the more importance I feel that timing plays in the whole process of hitting and decision making. I think it's the number one most important cascade of events that happens is, just from talking with Scott over the years, it's like, why does Bryce Harper, Mike Trout, some of these other guys, why do they swing at sliders in the dirt? Right? Like, how did he just swing at that pitch if it wasn't even close? Right? I think it's a timing issue when you're late, right? So your brain's preoccupied, not only trying to process the information coming in, your brain's also trying to organize your motor program to get in a position to get your swing off, right? So the marrying of those two things, when you're dealing with, less than 400 milliseconds, in a game of milliseconds and millimeters, and hitting a 100-mile-an-hour fastball with three pitches coming out of the same spot. I mean, it's, again, like Scott said, when you really think about it and break it down, it feels like it's impossible.
Yeah, it's impossible.
But yeah, I think that's kind of, I've had especially at the major league level, I think that's one of the main things to maintenance is their ability to get on time from a rhythmic standpoint, is like being able to get in sync with that pitcher, being able to get in a good hitting position on time, which in turn is going to maximize their ability to use that time and space to make good decisions and get a good swing off, right? So it's going to maximize their ability to move efficiently as well as make, you know, good, consistent decisions, you know, impact their decision-making process when they're up there. So you'll see it. You watch on TV, you know, you can watch the World Series come, you know, they got electric stuff coming in there. It's changing directions, and you'll see the elite hitters. It looks like they got early, you know, we call it like an early take. You can just see them shut down. You see their body shut down early out of the hand because they're on time. They're going right. And then sometimes you can see that same hitter later in the game, like Scott's saying, a guy's screwing with their timing, or he's a sidearmer, or he's not picking the ball up, and all of a sudden the same pitch, you'll see him flinch or, you know, make a late shutdown decision on a ball that's not close versus the other, right? And it's all milliseconds and millimeters. But for me, and just my observation of watching thousands and thousands of hitters and thousands of videos, it's all about that timing piece, that rhythm, getting in sync with that pitcher and getting your body in position on time. I feel like it unlocks your ability to make decisions as well as move efficiently. And you know, it's hard to quantify. You know, we kind of have some baselines that we work with. You know, I think looking forward, Hawkeye's coming in the game, so they're starting to be able to monitor a lot more in game things, like with connecting the hitters' movements with the pitchers' movements, kinematic sequences, and ball flights and speeds and all this craziness that, you know, we're going to be introduced with. And I think we're going to get there. But, you know, I think that's the one thing right now. It's hard to, you know, people kind of stay away from cognition and timing because it's super hard to quantify. You really can't see cognition, you know, with the naked eye, and it's hard to really quantify like what on time looks like. It's going to be a little bit different for everybody, you know. And same thing with cognition, but it's like those are hard areas to go to because we really don't know. Like we know what is conducive to producing those things, with being on time consistently, with making good decisions, you know, and you're, you know, like from a baseball perspective, like the timing control piece with the bat to ball skills. That's what it is for me, is like, you know, like Scott's talking about the interception, you know, of the motor program with the ball coming in. That's the bat to ball skills. Like, so we've seen, you know, the ability to get the bat to the ball. That's where that timing control piece, that usually the guys that are elite in that level will have elite timing control, right, Scott? Is that what we've seen?
Yeah, it's one of the predictors of contact rates. It contributes to contact. Now, I mean, you got to have the physical and the technical, all that contributes to contact, but this timing control measure, that interceptive timing, contributes in virtually all of our prediction models for predicting contact rate. Yeah, if you have really good interceptive timing ability, making those adjustments to changes in velocity, you have higher propensity for contact.
Yeah, and you'll see that. And those guys, I think they're afforded, you know, a bigger window of room for error, so to speak, right? Like you see Gene Segura. I had Gene Segura the last 2 years. You've watched him in the playoffs. You know, some of the balls that he hits, it's amazing how he does it, right? Yeah. Like the big hit he got the other night, you know, slider down and away, and he reaches out and pokes it into right center field. You know, that could be the game-winning hit. Yeah. But those are cognitive skills you see on display. Guys like him that have elite bat-to-ball skills. That's what we see in the baseball. You know, we're calling the bat-to-ball skills, but that's what it is. He's got elite. You know, we don't know. We've never tested him, but we know from watching him that those are the skills he needs to be elite in to be able to do the things he's doing, right?
Absolutely.
So it affords him a bigger margin of error with his timing and even his movement, right? And his decision making, because he can make those last millisecond decisions and millimeter movements with his bat to get the bat to ball and intercept that ball coming in. So it's really intriguing when you really understand. You say, man, that guy, he's got to be elite in XYZ or whatever. But going back to the original question with the timing, the rhythm and timing, the rhythm, I think that's the number one cascade of events that happens when guys are on time consistently. I think everything functions at its maximal level. So when you see guys locked in and they go on a tear for 2-3 weeks, they're in sync. They're getting on time consistently, pitch to pitch. They're making good decisions on a daily basis. They're not chasing. They're forcing the pitcher in the strike zone. They're taking their walks, and then when they do make a mistake, they're not missing it. right? So all those different things, it's all decision making. Even the decision of what you're trying to do, how you're priming yourself when you step in the box, that's a decision you make. That's of how you prime your system. That's going to impact your ability to get on time and your ability to get the bat to the ball, right? And we've known that, going back, just looking at through the history of, pre 2-strike approach, a 2-strike approach. So there's different ways to prime your system, right? And your ability to get in sync, get on time, make good decisions, all those different things, right? You're just trying to buy yourself more time with 2 strikes. That's the old 2-strike approach, right? To give yourself that little split second longer to make that little decision to lay off that nasty slider, the strike the ball slider down and away, those types of things. So understanding like how those components, the rhythm and timing, play in the role of the, again, making the millisecond and millimeter decision coming in, it's great. And, I'm constantly trying to find new ways to help these guys get on time and different drill progressions that we can put them in. And, the beautiful thing is, like I always try to find drills that just create drill environments, drill progressions that they're all going to execute a little bit differently because they're all different. They all process, they all move differently, but they all figure it out, right? They all figure out their own way to do it. And as a coach, ask them, hey, what were you thinking here? What were you trying to do? What changed from when you had no shot to all of a sudden now you're making good decisions? Now, what changed? Like, what was it? And then, using that as a cue for them down the road to help them work through that again if they get out of whack. Hey, remember before XY, you did XYZ. Are you doing that still? Or no, let's get back to that, or, try something different. So it's great with, again, until we get some technology or some way to track it and really quantify it and the impact it has on everything. It's, it's still going to be that X factor of the unknown, but we know it's one of the most important things, if not the most important thing in hitting a baseball.
And we, and Joe, to that point, we know, and that's why we have a rhythm control measure in our evaluation, because we know brains differ in terms of that mental metronome, that ability to synchronize your movements in kind of a rhythmic way. Musicians are among the best on the planet for obvious reasons. But that ability to synchronize and use your mental metronome to consistently get to a point in time in sync with the pitcher. Some athletes have incredible capacity to sync up their movements in time and to represent a rhythm that gets them to where they want to be in their hitting position. Others are going to be more variable, whether they're tend to speed up, especially under pressure, or slow down the rhythm and be late, or they're just more variable in general. We know some brains are just more variable in that kind of rhythmic kind of organization of your movements. And, we've talked about, if you've got low rhythm, you probably would benefit from simplifying some of those mechanical movements that are part of your getting, the movements you make to get to that good hitting position, because the more actions, the more movements you have to get to that good hitting position, the more you're having to synchronize and to time up and to put together in that rhythm. So it's really helpful for athletes to understand kind of how their rhythm system works, and then how their interceptive timing, that ability to adjust to variations in velocity, that send those commands out and delay. Sometimes you got to wait for pitches, right? Get a fastball and then an off-speed pitch. And sometimes you got to catch up. You get 2 breaking balls, 2-0, and you're still late on the fastball's coming and you're still late, and so the interceptive timing and the rhythm, those are 2 pieces that are important for athletes to understand how their brain kind of deals with those aspects of timing, so you can start working and train. Both of these skills you can train. That's what's cool. You can train to have better rhythm. You may not become Beethoven, but you can work on building, and there's techniques, to metronome-based techniques, to get more in rhythm, and then you definitely can improve your timing, your interceptive timing, and making time adjustments to achieve better contact rates. But those are great insights, Joe.
Yeah, Joe talking about the 2 most important aspects he thinks of hitting are rhythm and timing. And then I took the eval, and amongst other limitations to being a hitter, I see my scores there and I'm like, yeah, no, that makes a whole lot of sense. I was never on time to anything. So no, I appreciate you saying that, Joe. It's great insight. Um, hey, has your son committed yet? He's playing, right?
Yeah, he's committed to the University of Arizona.
Very cool.
Yeah, so he's pumped up about that. He's at McLennan Community College in Waco, Texas. Really good JUCO program. They've been in the World Series last 2 years. 2 years ago they won it, and then last year they lost at the World Series. But yeah, so he just committed to Arizona a few weeks ago, and he's fired up about that. And so it's good. I mean, that's, obviously University of Arizona, a great baseball school.
Yeah.
We really like their coaching staff. I think he's going to go there and get a chance to further his development and have a great college experience and see what happens from there.
Man, that's awesome. Anything? So the last segment on our podcast is 3 random and funny questions. Before we get there, you got anything to plug or anything you want to talk about here before we get there?
No, I have nothing to plug.
All right. That sounds great. I appreciate the honesty, right? That's one thing we love about you. Can I ask where you keep your Nationals World Series ring?
I keep it in a safe somewhere.
Very nondescript. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm obviously that's, it's a beautiful ring and I love it. Obviously that's something we'll have forever, and my sons will have it when I'm gone, and but I'm just really not the flashy type. I'm trying to find. I think I've worn it twice. It's hard to find a place to wear it. Obviously, it's a big, beautiful ring, and it's definitely going to draw some attention to you, and that's really not me. But
when I first met you, you were all about the bling.
Yeah, right. So, but it's definitely something I'm proud of and to have. But yeah, I keep it safe somewhere.
Yeah.
If I start wearing it more often, it may find its way in the house, but I don't know when that'll happen. So,
if you were starting an MLB roster today, Aaron Judge or Ohtani, who would you start with?
I mean, that's tough. I mean, I almost think Ohtani's he's in his own category.
Yes.
I mean, it's hard not to say Ohtani in any conversation because he's 2 all-star players in one, basically. So I'd have to say Ohtani with that one.
Yeah. And then last question, the furthest ball you've ever seen and witnessed in person, who hit it? Where was it? Do you remember it?
It's hard to say. There's been a lot. Sometimes the projections that we get back from it doesn't seem right. But Juan Soto's ball, probably one of the most impressive balls I've seen in person was the ball Juan Soto hit in the World Series opposite field up on the railroad tracks.
Mm-hmm.
That's, and just hearing, some of the all-time Astros, like I think Biggio and Bagwell were there at the World Series at the time, and reading some of their interviews afterwards, they said some of the biggest, strongest right-handed power hitters they've played with or seen at that park over the years. I mean, they were there a long time, and they said that there's been only a few times that big right-handed power hitters ever went that way, and he went opposite field that way.
Man,
that was one of the most impressive balls I've seen hit. But just over the years with Bryce Harper and, he's hit some very impressive home runs. Word
on the street is that you were a masher. So what's the furthest ball you've hit?
I don't know.
Brag, don't be humble. What's the furthest ball? No. I mean, what was the ball you remember that you just absolutely did monster damage to?
Probably in college. We cheated. We had the hot aluminum bats back then.
Yeah, that's
you're at Texas Tech, right?
Yeah, Texas Tech. But there's some days in Lubbock, the wind blows out rather firmly, consistently there. The wind blows every day. If the wind didn't blow, I don't think you could afford to live in West Texas because the people are great, and but the wind blows all the time in West Texas, and basically every day on my way to the field, I just look to see what way the flags were blowing, and that'd be my approach that day. But definitely, there's some balls I hit there that I was like, dang, did I just hit a ball like that? But I wasn't really, I had some years where I hit a lot of home runs. I had 33 at Texas Tech, which is still the single season record there. And then in pro ball, I had some big home run years, but I wouldn't consider myself a power hitter. I think like I didn't have just raw power like in BP or whatever. I couldn't even come close to hitting it as far as some of these other guys. But in the game, using the pitcher's velocity, able to square the ball up consistently, I'd able to hit some home runs. But they count in the 10th throw just like they do in the 100th throw. So
that's right.
But I think that's one of the things that hurt me is from just my short big league career of up and down over the course of 4 different seasons, but most of my bats were pinch hits, and my power wouldn't show up when I'd pinch hit like it would when I was playing every day. And again, going back to the timing thing, I had to be feeling good and timing in order to move my contact point up to do some damage. And when you're pinch hitting off the closer, and again, we didn't train like we do now back then. And so you sit around for 5 days, and all of a sudden you go get an at bat off Billy Wagner, and what I mean. And so it's tough to take a chance to get the bat head out, and that was just me. So I felt like I put good at bats together and made good decisions. And doing the assessment with Scott a few years ago, just to give Scott some fluff, not that he needs any, but when I did the assessment, and that's really what sold me on it. After I did the assessment, me and Scott sat down, and he looked at my assessment, and he's never seen me take one swing, never saw me take one at bat, never looked at anything. And he looking at my assessment, he nailed me as a hitter. So like velocity didn't bother me, spin didn't bother me, but change ups and split fingers were my kryptonite. And he told me that just basically looking at my profile, which was crazy. And I'm like, all right, there may be something to this stuff. I mean, this is pretty early on in the process. I think this is the first time Scott and I really got around each other and got to communicate or whatever. And so that was good. So I was able to, and he saw my profile, and I was able to make good decisions pretty consistently. I had some years where I walked more than I struck out, and slugged, pretty relatively high. That's like I always tease people, I played in the wrong era and nowadays with the information and everything they got, I would have been a lot more valued, I think. But
yeah, right. Yeah, there's no. Hey, and just for clarification, there's no special voodoo or horoscope-ish kind of nature to this. What you're talking about on the report, it's just how our brains are wired, and we're going to have things we do well and things we struggle with, and that's all we're disclosing here. So it's there's nothing special. There's no special powers we have. It's just it's how your brains are wired. So the fact that it aligns, that's always really cool, though. I mean, it's just
absolutely
it's who we are. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Joe, we're going to have you on. Appreciate your time today, but we're definitely going to have you on. We're going to talk about chase rates, maybe get into some more timing and rhythm stuff. So appreciate your time today, man. You're awesome. Appreciate it. Enjoy the World Series. So thanks again for jumping on with us, man.
Absolutely. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me. And, lastly, this is the most I've talked to Scott in a couple of years. He's getting big time now.
Yeah.
Traveling around the country. He used to have time for me all the time. Now I got to get on. I got to get on the now I got to get on a podcast to talk to him. So
I got no response.
There you go.